Welcome to Media Week. My guest host, co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek, joins me at the desk now. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, James.
Hello, Ingrid.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk today some of the most valuable brands which has been released this week. So this is around Australia.
Yes.
What comes up on top?
Yeah, there's actually a couple I'll run through here. The first one's run by a company called Brand Finance. They do a global measurement of companies, but they also zero in on Australia. Now, the top three they had in Australia, they do two things. They've got most valuable and then strongest brands. Okay. So most valuable, Telstra won again.
Really?
Yeah, Woolies and then Coles, the two supermarket brands, were next. But the strongest brand is Qantas.
Really?
Which is interesting, yeah. And then Harvey Norman and Virgin. So a lot more of a big retail focus there.
Harvey Norman, of course, comes in second as well, did you say?
Third.
Qantas I can understand. I mean, it's, you know, it's an airline. It's got a big name for itself, globally recognisable.
Sure.
Makes sense, right?
Power of advertising for Harvey Norman, though. I mean, it's always... You're always bombarded with the messages.
I guess.
And they do lots of sponsorships.
Been around forever.
Yeah, the name's always there. You just associate it with sort of homewares, electrical, sort of, you know, things like that. So
we're just looking at the screen, sorry, because I'm just seeing that the rest of the
so there
6
you go.
to 10. We just saw 1 to 5 most valuable in this list.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the NAB and Westpac. So we've got the big banks all in there.
The big banks are still there, and they had a pretty shocking year, didn't they, you know? So
maybe most recognisable, but most valuable.
Most valuable, yeah. Well, they're interesting. The only bank in the top 10 for strongest is CommBank.
Right.
So the others aren't there for that. But just something that popped into my box just earlier today. There's another one called Brand Index. They have a best buzz ranking. Right, and they survey in Australia, but they're not just Australian firms. So this is anybody operating in Australia.
Oh, okay.
And Netflix is their number one.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
that probably doesn't surprise me.
And Netflix is also their global number one.
Yeah, right. So globally and in Australia, the best buzz brand. What buzz brand? The best sort of.
Yeah, they survey people. They do a couple of thousand people they speak to every week, and they ask them, "Have you heard of this?" Brands you've heard of, they give them a list. Which of these brands have you engaged with or heard something about in the last fortnight? So Netflix is always up there. Kmart's another one that does very well here, and YouTube. YouTube's up.
YouTube, all right. And also radio ratings started this week, I should say. Revenue numbers for 2018 were released. What are we seeing? Because Melbourne market's particularly interesting. Yeah,
Melbourne market's number one. It's always been close, you know. Sydney's been a little bit ahead in terms of revenue, but Melbourne's up there with it. But for the year 2018, Melbourne wrote the most revenue, so it's now really the biggest market. So all those announcers and salespeople working in the Melbourne market, they should be able to say, look, I'm worth as much as your Sydney people, because I think Sydney, you know, announcers would get the highest salaries in Australia, just because it's seen as the, you know, as a critical market. But, you know, Melbourne's got a good argument now that, look, hey, come on, you should do it. Radio revenue was up 3% year on year, did about 800 million. That sort of ranks them about 5th in terms of where they sit in dollars earned.
Okay. Well, we might move on from that for the moment, James, but this week the email marketing business Campaign Monitor announced 2 new acquisitions to what is known as the CM Group. Now, since the Sydney-based founders sold a major stake in the business, head office is now in Tennessee, and James, who's sitting right next to me here, James caught up with visiting Chief Executive Wellford Dillard to get the latest on the company's expansion plans. So let's take a listen.
Wellford, we're talking about CM Group today. Now, you're the visiting CEO. You're based in Nashville. It's not a big household name here, CM Group, but a lot of people might be more familiar with Campaign Monitor. I guess it's key business.
It is. It is a key business. Campaign Monitor still under CM Group. Campaign Monitor is one part of our family of brands. Of the 5 brands that we have now, Campaign Monitor remains one of our largest product lines, you know, within CM Group.
Now, Campaign Monitor, of course, is a successful email marketing business. Australian foundations, I believe the co-founders of the company. Just give us a bit of background on how your company got involved with Campaign Monitor.
Of course. So I originally came from Emma, where I was the CFO, COO at the time. And Insight Venture Partners did the original investment in Campaign Monitor in mid-2014. Loved the fast-growing self-service business, and wanted to start to push up market and do more personalization, larger deals. And Insight at the time decided, hey, you know what would be interesting is actually if we began to try and consolidate the industry a little bit and go about this a different way, because I think they felt like it was difficult to serve all these markets in one platform. And so we came about this, and Insight found Emma in Nashville and Delivra and brought them together, and now we found Sailthrough and LiveClicker. And the intent here is to have a home for every marketer on the planet, fundamentally. And you could start with Campaign Monitor as a self-service business. It's come in, it's easy to use, it's simple. It also still works with some of the largest publishers on the planet. Emma would become sort of that first step when you want to do personalization as a marketer. Start to do some marketing automation. That's your first toe in the water. And Sailthrough really is what Campaign Monitor thought it was going to push and become, which is when personalization is what you do. And you're larger and more technical, and you have a technical team, and that's Sailthrough for us. And LiveClicker brings real-time personalization.
Tell us about I guess in the early days of Campaign Monitor, brands were starting to experiment with email marketing. How critical is it these days, and how many brands, or what percentage of brands, can you give us a market share for Campaign Monitor?
So for global market share, I couldn't tell you the exact number. I think we have over 300,000 customers across all of our businesses right now. Campaign Monitor sends about 2.9 billion emails a month. Sailthrough sends almost 3 times that amount. So it's still, very large, very fast-growing businesses.
Email has become a bit of a problem for some of the receivers of the email. I mean, how responsible are you for that sort of, what some people call a glut of email?
Sure. Like to think we're not responsible for that at all. We actually, we recently did a campaign and really believe that GDPR in a lot of ways saved email. That fundamentally, now you have by having opt-in and permission, based marketing, you have more effective marketing that's out there, and it's cleaner. We see, better deliverability, fewer bounce rates, and it's actually, I think, better enabled companies to have true one-to-one conversations with people.
Is one of the things of smarter marketing maybe sending less emails, but to the right people?
I think that's exactly. It's a big part of it. That's what we see, and I think we see that with Sailthrough as they get into personalization. Is we're now able to find out who the truly valuable customers are. We're able to develop a sense of who might churn, who might be leaving you as a brand, and to reach out to them proactively in an automated fashion, rather than just bombarding you with the cadence that we think is, or that a brand would think is important to them. And so, yes, so I think it
Regulators around the world have been coming to grips with sort of data collection and people's personal details. I mean, obviously, a lot of that to do with Facebook and the way it operates. Mm-hmm. Is that a challenge for your company in the future about what you'll be allowed and what you won't be allowed to do?
I think we had, as with all email marketing companies, had a huge push and made a tremendous amount of investments to become GDPR compliant across all of our brands. And we're very cognizant of all of the policies and regulations around the world, and we certainly, as a global company, have to adhere to all of them. And security is a massive concern of ours and a big focus on our part, as well as the privacy initiatives. So,
to a lot of people, email is free marketing, so how do you base a business that you've got now? I think you've got something like 500 people with these new businesses working around the world. How do you generate the revenues?
So it varies by brand. Campaign Monitor is still very much a self-service platform for the most part in terms of how people come in. So we're really starting to go back into brand marketing and really start to, I think Campaign Monitor lost its voice a little bit in the self-service market, and particularly in Australia as well. And you'll see us in Australia in the next 2 months in terms of running out-of-home campaigns, a lot more advertising for Campaign Monitor, the brand. We're seeing a lot of companies come into Australia now. Campaign Monitor never left, and I think we just need to get a little bit louder about that aspect of it. So the brand awareness, a lot of podcast sponsorships and everything. With Sailthrough, that's different. Sailthrough is much more of an outbound effort for us. There's also a tremendous amount of referrals from prior Sailthrough users who actually, as they've left their roles and moved to other companies, love working with Sailthrough, and so a tremendous amount of Sailthrough's revenue actually comes from people who've worked with them and love them.
How is there sort of a body that like an email marketing body, or is there sort of self-regulation with the industry? Because it was getting a bad rap for a while with sort of, spam emails, I guess, and lots of that flooding. There's still a bit of that around, but it seems to have backed off a little bit.
It has backed off a little bit, and I think, and also because Gmail, Yahoo, and the others have also gotten much better at identifying spam proactively. Some of the promotions aspect of Gmail has actually helped tremendously, and I think marketers themselves are very much aware of the impact and the problems they have associated with spam. So.
The way people are interacting with email, I guess it seems to be mainly on mobile phones these days. Has that been a big change for users of emails, just relying on that small screen? It's a
great segue into what Live Clicker does for us. And so I think mobile allows us to become even more personal, to make your email even more personal than it ever has been before. And a great example of that is that with Live Clicker we can do geo-specific weather-based personalization, where you could open an email from a clothing company, and if you're in a sunny climate that day, I might show you and recommend you a pair of flip-flops. And if you're in a cold area, then I know where you are geo and the weather, and I would recommend a different product to you at that point in time. At the same time, there could be a map that shows you immediately where the closest store is. So, if anything, mobile has actually allowed us to get even closer to the consumer and truly provide them a much more singular, unique, personal experience.
Are you seeing brands sort of commit more funds to email marketing? Does it come away from other medias they've been using in the past, and they realise maybe they're getting a better response rate and better revenues out of email?
And they do. Email continues to produce the highest ROI of any marketing channel, bar none. And I think as you've seen a lot of marketers really start to struggle with SEO as a result of some of the changes on Google and Facebook and other areas. And we're hearing that a lot from some of the largest brands in the world, is how hard it's become to do SEO. And I think which has just made email that much more important as a channel.
Talk to you about the future of emails. We mentioned mobile phones, but are wearables going to become a bigger impact? I mean, people looking at their Apple Watch or their Samsung Watch?
I think it certainly is an impact there. We haven't seen a real shift in demand. We haven't had customers come to us and really make very many explicit, requests for, but it certainly is a component, obviously, of as we do testing and we, check display for all of the work that we do. We're certainly very cognizant of the mobile market.
Yeah, and sort of markets around the world. I mean, are you what's sort of mature, and what parts of the world where there's still, we think, quite a bit of growth?
We're seeing growth in almost every market. Our U.S. business on the self-service business and campaign monitor grew over 70% year over year last fall. We're seeing strong growth rates, the same rate in the Australian markets. The EU is actually, after GDPR, we saw a slowdown, I think, as the market sorted itself out a little bit. But we've seen a return, I think, because a lot of people, as they saw their list, they had to re-permission their lists. They still have to grow, and now they have to grow those lists again. They grow them in, I think, the right way from an opt-in perspective, but we're seeing growth out of the EU again as well, and we're seeing this across all of our brands.
Some people in sort of more traditional media probably see email as a bit of a disruptor. It's sort of upset their business models and they've had to adapt. Are there things on the horizon that could disrupt what you're doing?
I think for us, email still has a long way to go. I think if anything, people have asked this question for a long time. People have loved, people have said email's dead for 10 years to date. But I think if anything, you see with the new personalization tools and technologies, and again, as we talked about, as people move, as you interact with your email more and more on a mobile device, it is the best. It does become a much more personal interaction. And so we really believe email, has a really long way to go. And we continue to hear that from all of our customers.
What's the right technical jargon if I wanted to ask you about sort of machine learning or emails just going from machine to machine that aren't actually ever seen by a human?
Mm-hmm. Well, machine learning's, I think, probably the right way to phrase it for us. It's a great example. Sailthrough has a large data science team that we never had in any other brands. And there's a lot of machine learning and a lot of AI, and we talked about that earlier in terms of being able to do predictive behaviors for consumers as a brand, so that I can now, in an automated fashion, reach out to them before there's an event, before they might change their behavior, So, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Can we just finish with maybe, what's the next big thing in email? I mean, the things we're going to see this year or in the next couple of years that will start popping up in inboxes?
I think it really is, it's much more personalization. And the thing that we love about LiveClicker is there are a lot of personalization tools that have never been available to very small businesses and small businesses. It's sort of been the domain of competitors, sort of the large businesses that are out there. And the beauty of email, right, is in today's day and age and with social as well, your local coffee shop can compete with world-class brands, right? But those world-class brands can now afford more personalized, more personalization tools. And now I think with tools like LiveClicker, we intend to be able to bring some of those previously very expensive, unattainable technologies into the lower market. The larger enterprises still can use a more complex technical suite, but there are truly valuable differentiating technologies that we can bring to bear and integrate easily in our other platforms.
Yeah, and email's not going to go away. I mean, it's not going to get down to sort of other software applications where people use internally within a company or communicate with each other within the walls of Facebook.
We certainly haven't seen that at all, and I think our growth numbers speak for that.
Yeah. Thanks very much for talking to us.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, well, James Manning's still with us in the studio. We're going to talk TV ratings. Week 3 we're in now, right at the top end of the year or the start of the year. Here you go, Australian Open. No surprise to see that on top. Yeah,
no, look, absolutely. 9 swapped, the tennis and the cricket swap. We all know that story. Look, the 9 had been a bit quiet until the Australian Open. 7 had figures showing they were up year on year, 9 wasn't. But, when we see the numbers done again at the end of the Australian Open, I think 9 will be very happy with where they're at.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And there, no doubt some of these Married at First Sights and things will start popping in the next few weeks.
10 moves celebrity early. It's done very well. It hasn't been against reality, it's just been against sport, so it's been a good alternative. That will change next week.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the subscription television top ratings. Look, sport, right? Sport really takes the cake there.
Yeah, look, Fox Cricket's been on fire this summer, doing very well. 4 of those top 5 shows there, doing fantastic business, and the Outlander was the one non-sport program
there you go.
in the top 5.
James Manning, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Co-host, editor and publisher of Mediaweek there, James Manning.